I didn't think much of it at first. It was the middle of winter, February 2021. The world was still frozen in its strange new rhythm. Empty streets, masked faces, endless Zoom meetings, and the quiet, simmering dread that came from reading the news every morning. That night, I had a dream. In it, I stood alone on the rooftop of a high-rise building, somewhere I didn't recognize. The sky was the color of old ash. The sun had vanished, replaced by a dull, flickering light from behind the clouds. The air was thick, heavy, like it had weight, and far below me, a sea of buildings were slowly being swallowed by water. Not a wave, not a storm, but something deeper, like the city itself was sinking. I wasn't afraid in the dream. That's the part that still unsettles me. I wasn't panicking or screaming or running. I was just watching, quietly, like I already knew there was nothing I could do. When I woke up, my chest was tight, and there was this strange ringing in my ears. I wrote it down. I've always kept a dream journal, a habit left over from college. It wasn't the first strange dream I'd had, but it was the first one that felt real, like it had weight, like it meant something. I shrugged it off, until it happened again. 2 nights later, I dreamt of a tunnel. It wasn't a subway or a cave. It was like a long, concrete corridor beneath the ground, lined with flickering fluorescent lights. I was barefoot, walking forward. I could hear water dripping in the distance, but the tunnel stretched endlessly, and at the far end, there was a figure, still, not moving. I never got close enough to see their face. This time, I woke up with my heart pounding. My bed sheets were damp with sweat. It was 3:47 a.m. I didn't write that one down. Instead, I did something I hadn't done in years. I searched online, not for the meaning of dreams. That wasn't the point. I just wanted to know if anyone else had experienced something similar. I started simple. Strange dreams during COVID. Thousands of results. Reddit threads, blog posts, Facebook groups I didn't know existed. People from New York, Berlin, Sao Paulo, Mumbai. They were describing things I'd seen. The dark skies, the rising water, the tunnels, the unknown figures. Some were more vivid than mine. Others were fragments. But there was a pattern. I wasn't imagining this. Something was happening. Some people called them pandemic dreams. Others used bigger words, mass lucid states, collective unconscious anomalies, even dreamwave convergence. I didn't care what it was called. I only knew one thing. We were dreaming the same dreams, and no one was talking about it. Not on the news, not in the papers, not in any official report I could find. But scroll long enough, dig deep enough, and you'll find them. The stories. The people who woke up gasping, wondering if what they saw was just imagination or something more. I bookmarked a thread that night. It had over 8,000 upvotes. The post was simple. A woman from Toronto wrote, "For the last 4 nights, I've been dreaming about a submerged city. It looks like New York, but it's half underwater. There's this sound, like a siren, but deeper. My dad, who passed away last year, is there, just staring at me. I never say a word. I just watch the skyline sink." I remember sitting there, in the dark, my laptop screen the only light in the room. I remember thinking, how could someone else see exactly what I saw? The next day, I took a screenshot of that post. I printed it. I pinned it to my corkboard, and then I started tracking. Not the news. Not infections or death counts or vaccine charts. I started tracking dreams, other people's dreams. I created a folder on my desktop, Shared Dreams Project. I had no plan, no theory, just instinct. Some part of me knew there was a pattern, and I was determined to find it. It started small, a screenshot here, a Reddit comment there, a few Twitter threads from insomniacs venting at 3 a.m. Most of them weren't even looking for answers. They were just trying to get it off their chest, whatever it was. I began saving everything I could find. Threads, images, descriptions, date-stamped quotes. I made a spreadsheet. Yeah, I know how that sounds. But at some point, this stopped being about curiosity. It started feeling like something I needed to understand. The spreadsheet had 4 columns: date, location, dream theme, detail tags. It sounds mechanical, but I was looking for patterns: repetition, overlap, timing. I didn't have to wait long. By mid-March, I had logged over 120 entries. People from different cities, countries, even continents, dreaming almost the same thing. A corridor with no doors, a skyline swallowed by water, a figure at the end of a long hallway, always just out of reach. A massive humming noise no one could locate. The number 2036, that one came up more than once. And a word some dreamers said they'd heard, others said they'd seen, but no one could quite spell Emari, or maybe Emari. It was always blurry. None of this felt random, especially because most of these people didn't know each other, had never interacted, and were posting weeks or months apart. But the dreams rhymed, like verses from a poem no one remembered writing. There was this one post from a guy in Oregon that got to me. He was a nurse, mid-30s, posted under the username ourfogline6. His story was short. I keep having the same dream. A subway station with no trains. I'm walking along the yellow line, and every time I pass a mirror, there are mirrors instead of posters. I see myself, but older, way older, same eyes, different everything else. He mouthed something to me, but I never hear it. Just the same silence, over and over. The comments underneath that post exploded. Hundreds of replies. Some people said they'd seen the same mirror. Others said they saw someone else in their reflection. A parent, a child, or sometimes no face at all. I saved every comment. I started the color coding recurring elements in the spreadsheet: water underground passages, mirrors, unknown languages or symbols, time distortion, seeing yourself in future, past. Almost 70% of entries had 2 or more of those tags. By April, things got weirder. That's when I noticed the timeline convergence. For about 10 days straight, between April 2nd and April 12th, people across different forums began posting about the exact same sound in their dreams. They described it differently. Some said it was like a Tibetan singing bowl. Others said low industrial humming, like a distant engine. But the pitch, the timing, the feeling it left behind, all the same. One guy wrote, "It felt like my bones were vibrating, like the sound wasn't outside me, it was inside." Another said, "It wasn't a noise, it was a presence." I asked myself, was this a coincidence? Could the world being locked down have synchronized our sleep cycles somehow? Jet lag had disappeared, office hours blurred. Maybe we were all dreaming at the same time and somehow the same thing. But that didn't explain the content, the specificity, the repetition. And then came the emails. Yeah, emails. At some point, I guess someone found my little tracker online. I'd uploaded it as a shared Google Sheet for a private Discord, but the link must have gotten out. I started receiving messages from people. At first it was 1 or 2 a day, then dozens. Strangers. People who said they'd never told anyone their dream before. Some were scared. Some were just confused. Some were relieved to finally see someone else writing it down. They'd write things like, "Please tell me I'm not going crazy. Is this something viral? Like a mass delusion? Do you think we're tapping into something real?" Some of them weren't even from English-speaking countries. I had to Google Translate more than one, but they all had one thing in common. They didn't think it was just a dream anymore. There was one woman from Istanbul who wrote me something I've never forgotten. Her message was short, no punctuation. It read, "We are seeing the shape before it arrives." I didn't understand what she meant at first, but that line haunted me, still does. She didn't say if it would arrive. She said, "We're seeing the shape, like shadows before the figure, ripples before the wave." That's when I began asking myself a question I hadn't dared to until then. What if these dreams aren't about the past or the present, but the future? I know, that's when it starts to sound insane. But the deeper I got into this thing, the more I saw that dreams weren't just private experiences anymore. They were becoming communal, distributed, shared across cultures, continents, time zones. And if you believe, just for a moment, that dreams are more than noise in the brain, more than electrical leftovers, if you believe they might be a signal, then what exactly are we picking up? That question stuck with me, and I wasn't the only one asking it, because just a few weeks later, I'd come across a story that changed everything I thought I knew about dreaming, and made this whole project feel a lot more serious than I ever expected. But I'll get to that in the next part. For now, just ask yourself, have you had a dream recently that felt different? Because if you have, you might not be dreaming alone. By May, I had stopped calling it a coincidence. The spreadsheet had grown into a full-on archive, hundreds of entries, people from all over the world, their names, their dreams, their timestamps, and sometimes their voices. I had started asking for audio recordings. I don't even remember when that began. Maybe it was when I realized that some dreams lost their power in writing, like they needed to be heard, the silence between words, the way someone's breath caught when describing a detail. Those things mattered. The voices came slowly at first. A woman in Buenos Aires, a teenager in Nova Scotia, a truck driver in Oregon, a retired school teacher from South Korea. They weren't dreamers, not in the woo-woo sense. They weren't spiritual influencers or lucid dreamers or whatever you want to call that genre of YouTube. They were just people, and that's what made it more real. One message in particular stuck with me. It came from a man named Samuel in Lagos, Nigeria. He had the kind of voice you remember, low, thoughtful, a bit shaky. He said he didn't like writing emails, so he just recorded himself speaking. "I don't know what this means," he said, "but I keep seeing a white hallway, endless. The walls pulse like breathing, and at the end, there's this woman in red. She never says a word, but she always holds out a mirror, and when I look into it, I don't see myself. I see my son, but older, much older, maybe 40, maybe dead. He's standing in a place I don't know, somewhere covered in ash, and every time I wake up, crying." He paused for a long moment. "I've never had dreams like this, not until last year, and now they come every 2 or 3 nights." He ended the recording with just 5 words. "Please tell me I'm not alone." Another came from a woman in Osaka, mid-50s, former nurse. She didn't even say hello. Her message started mid-sentence. "And then I'm inside the train, but there's no engine, no wheels, it's just floating. But the sound is still there, like metal scraping metal, even though nothing is touching. Everyone's asleep around me, everyone but one child. He looks at me and says, 'You're not supposed to be here yet.' Then he disappears." She stopped, breathed. "I always wake up before the tunnel ends." That phrase, "before the tunnel ends," it started showing up in other messages too, almost word for word. People who had never met, never spoken, never seen each other, and yet they dreamed the same lines. By midsummer, I had voice notes from a young woman in Turkey who kept dreaming of submerged staircases, a coal miner from rural Kentucky who swore he'd seen cities made of glass under the sea, a man in Bangladesh who claimed he'd been floating between moons, watching Earth flicker like a candle. Different cultures, different languages, but strangely, the emotional tone was always the same: silence, powerlessness, and awe. Not horror, exactly, not terror, more like the feeling of witnessing something you were never supposed to see. I reached out to a neurologist I knew from college, Dr. Amy Carter. She had gone full brain science at Stanford and now ran a sleep research lab in Chicago. I told her I had a research idea, left out the weirder parts. She listened politely, then said something I'll never forget. Dream convergence isn't impossible. Circadian cycles are synchronized more than we think. Cultural input, shared trauma, global media loops, it all influences REM state imagery. I asked if she'd ever seen anything like this. She said no. Then she added, "But if what you're saying is true, and I'm not saying it is, then it's not a psychological phenomenon. It's a network effect. I asked her what that meant. It means the dream isn't coming from inside us, she said. It's passing through us. I sat with that idea for days. The dream isn't coming from us. It's passing through us. That one sentence flipped everything. I went back through the archive and began highlighting moments where people described feeling like receivers, witnesses, or observers, instead of dreamers. Over 80% used language like, I was just watching. I didn't feel like it was my dream. It was like tuning into someone else's memory. And in those same entries, another pattern emerged. Most people reported having these dreams between 3 and 4 hours a.m., almost universally. I cross-checked with the global time zones. In many regions, that 3 a.m. window overlapped with others experiencing the same dream content, sometimes within minutes of each other, thousands of miles apart. That's not random. That's signal. I kept thinking back to what the woman from Istanbul had said. We are seeing the shape before it arrives. What if that wasn't poetry? What if we are seeing the shape? What if something's coming and our subconscious is trying to draw its outline? And then came the voice memo from India. It was from a man named Naveen, mid-30s, software engineer, calm voice, very matter-of-fact. I don't know why I'm sending this, he said, but here goes. I've had the same dream 7 times in the last 2 months. I'm walking across a bridge, I don't know where. The sky's green, everything is silent. Then I see the people, standing on either side of the bridge, all of them staring at the water. They don't speak, but one by one, they start to point down. I look over the edge. There's no water, just something else, moving, breathing, like the sea is alive, and it's waiting. I never get to the other side. Then he said the thing that stayed with me for weeks. The strange part isn't the dream. The strange part is, I think I've seen that bridge before. Not in real life, not in photos, but in other people's dreams, online. On your spreadsheet. He paused. Tell me, is that bridge real? I didn't know how to answer, because I had seen it too. The first time I brought the data to someone from the academic world, they smiled politely, then looked at me like I was trying to pitch a Netflix series. I get it. Dreams are messy, subjective, unreliable. The scientific method doesn't play well with symbolism or whispers from the unconscious. But here's the problem. When too many people start dreaming the same thing, and those dreams share language, structure, timing, and even geographic correlation, it stops being just imagination. It starts looking like data. And science loves data, or at least it claims to. I tried going the academic route, reached out to 6 psychology departments. One dream researcher from a university in the Netherlands agreed to talk. We Zoomed. She was kind, curious, open, but cautious. She said, "This isn't unheard of. There are historical records of collective dream phenomena, especially following trauma, wars, pandemics, natural disasters." Carl Jung wrote about it in the early 20th century. Archetypal convergence, he called it. I asked her what that meant. Sometimes, the collective unconscious reacts like a single organism, she said. Trauma makes it more sensitive. We start dreaming the same symbols because they're baked into us. Old, inherited, primal. You're not seeing prophecy, you're seeing reflection. It made sense, and yet, it didn't explain the timing, or the specificity. It didn't explain why people on opposite sides of the world, with no cultural overlap, were dreaming about the same bridge, the same tunnel, the same sound, sometimes within minutes of each other. So I asked her plainly, could it be a signal? Could something external be triggering these dreams? She paused, not because she didn't have an answer, but because she didn't want to say it out loud. Then finally, there are things we don't fully understand about the nature of consciousness, about what it's capable of when it moves outside the individual mind. But no, we can't prove anything. Not yet. That's the thing about science. It demands proof. But proof needs a lab, a control group, a measurable mechanism. Dreams don't follow those rules. Dreams spill out. They defy logic, leak across boundaries, time, memory, language, identity. You can't pin a dream down under a microscope. You can't slice it and weigh it. And maybe that's exactly why we ignore them. Because they speak a language we used to understand before we decided that everything had to be explained. I went back to my tracker. By then, it had over 900 entries. I was starting to see a new tag show up, something I hadn't noticed at first. People weren't just dreaming about places anymore. They were dreaming about events, future events, or rather, events that hadn't happened yet. One woman in Portugal wrote, "I saw a city on fire, not from bombs, from within. The buildings cracked open like eggs, and underneath, light. Not flame, not heat, just light." A man in Seattle. There were no people, just echoes. Everything had the feeling of an afterimage, like the moment right after something big. But I didn't know what it was. A college student in Iceland. There were birds falling from the sky, but they weren't birds. They were metal, and when they hit the ground, they didn't make a sound. They didn't call them predictions, but that's what they felt like. Not memories, not fantasies, visions. It reminded me of something I'd read years ago, a passage in a forgotten article about dream epidemiology, a niche field no one really takes seriously. In it, a researcher made a bold statement. If enough people dream the same thing at the same time, it may indicate a shared informational field, like a psychic pressure point. The dream is not a cause or an effect. It is a leak. A leak. That word stuck with me, because that's exactly how it felt, like something was leaking into our world, through our dreams, not all at once, not violently, just slowly, quietly, a drip, a whisper, a warning. And if you think that sounds too far-fetched, consider this. In 1999, a little-known Japanese artist named Tatsuki published a manga called The Future I Saw. In it, she described a series of dreams, 15 in total. Dreams that, over the next 2 decades, began to come true. Earthquakes, tsunamis, celebrity deaths, even the exact date of the Fukushima disaster, March 11, 2011, was predicted in the margins of her drawings. Most people ignored it, until her final dream described an event still yet to happen, scheduled for 5 m, July 5th, 2025. A cataclysm in the Pacific, a landmass rising from the sea, a wave taller than anything humanity has ever seen. The dream reads like myth, but what if it isn't? What if these dreams aren't isolated phenomena, but early tremors of something bigger? Not physical tremors, psychic ones. The further I got into this, the more I realized science isn't wrong, but it's not the whole picture. There's a limit to how much you can measure before you start missing what matters. And what matters is this: people are dreaming things they shouldn't be able to dream, in places they've never been, in symbols they've never learned, in languages they don't speak. At times that align down to the minute. That's not coincidence. That's signal. And whatever it is, it's getting louder. The first time I had the dream, I didn't write it down. I told myself I was tired, that I had been reading too much, listening to too many strangers, chasing too many half-formed patterns through the fog. I told myself my brain was simply echoing what I had absorbed. But deep down, I knew better. This one felt different. It began in silence. No colors, no sounds, just the sensation of weightlessness. Like I wasn't in a place, but suspended between places. Then came the structure. Not a building, not a tunnel. It was a grid, endless, floating, like I was walking across invisible lines in midair. Below me was water, flat and black and mirror still. Ahead of me, maybe 20 feet away, was someone standing, back turned. I couldn't move closer, but I couldn't look away either. And then the sound came. That same deep hum I had seen described in dozens of other dreams. Except now, it wasn't outside me. It was inside, buzzing in my bones, vibrating just behind my sternum, It felt like I was being scanned. And then the figure turned, and I woke up. I lay there for hours, staring at the ceiling, pretending it was just a dream. But I knew that wasn't true, because I had read that exact description before, almost word for word, in a message I received from someone in Finland 3 months earlier. They had described the grid, the water, the hum, and the figure who never faced them. The only difference? In their dream, the figure didn't turn around. Mine did, and I saw its face. It was my face, older, thinner, and for a moment I thought the eyes were glowing. I didn't tell anyone, not right away, not even my friends. I buried it in the archive under a generic name, Grid Sequence Variant Number 48. But something had shifted, because now I wasn't just collecting the signal, I was inside it. I started dreaming more frequently after that, once a week at first, then every couple of nights. Each dream had familiar pieces, dark skies, unknown cities, submerged structures, but also something else, a presence, watching, not malicious, not friendly, just there, observing. The strangest part, I wasn't afraid. If anything, I felt calm, like I was being prepared. For what? I still don't know. One night, I had the bridge dream. Yeah, that bridge. The one from Naveen's recording. The one dozens of others had described. It appeared just like they'd said. Quiet, floating, stretching across fog with no visible supports. I could hear nothing but my own breathing. And then I saw them, the watchers, lining both sides of the bridge, not speaking, just facing the water, like they were waiting. When I looked down, I didn't see water. I saw a light, not shining up but inward, like the sea itself was folding in on something, some radiant core hidden beneath the waves. And I swear to you, I felt it watching back. That's the moment I woke up. 3:16 a.m. I went back to the spreadsheet and started cross-referencing timestamps. I pulled every entry that mentioned the bridge. Almost half of them had woken up between 3:10 and 3:20 a.m., across different time zones, on different continents, different months, same minute window. I stared at that screen for what felt like hours. It wasn't just pattern anymore. It was synchronization, as if, somehow, we were all logging into the same frequency, like radio towers picking up the same broadcast. But from where? And for what? That question haunted me. So I stopped asking it. I stopped updating the archive, stopped reading messages. I turned off notifications, closed the forum, left the Discord I had created. I went dark for 3 weeks. And then I got the call. A friend of mine, Nina. She'd helped me verify location data in the early days. Smart, grounded, deeply skeptical about all of this. She was the kind of person who needed a peer-reviewed study to believe the sky was blue. She called at 2:11 a.m., which, by itself, was already strange. I picked up groggily. She didn't say hi, just, I had it. I asked her what she meant. The bridge, the hum, the figure. I saw it all. She was breathing fast. I could tell she was trying not to cry. And then, there was a voice. First time I've ever heard one in a dream. It said, she paused. It said, "You're late." That's when I sat up, because I had heard the exact same phrase, one night earlier. After that, I knew I couldn't walk away from this. Not anymore. This wasn't just a trend, or a pandemic side effect, or a digital folklore event. This was something else. Something real. Something that was still unfolding. And I wasn't on the outside anymore. I was inside the transmission. That's when I started asking a new question. Not what the dreams meant. Not whether they were shared. But this. What are we tuning into? Is it something human? Is it something other? Is it a warning? A blueprint? A preparation? Or is it just the future bleeding backward through time, finding us in our most vulnerable hours, whispering in symbols we don't yet understand? I don't know the answer, but I'm starting to think we were never meant to know, just to feel it, to see it, and maybe, if we're paying attention, to choose. It started on a Tuesday. I remember because it was one of the first quiet days in weeks. No new messages, no calls, no unexpected links sent by strangers. I was walking back from the grocery store, the city unusually still. Birds were louder than usual. Even the cars sounded distant. It felt like the world was holding its breath. When I got home, I opened my laptop out of habit, just to check. That's when I saw the first message. Subject line, I had the dream. No name, no intro. Just a single paragraph. I was standing in the middle of a dry lake bed. The earth was cracked, endless. The sky was gray, not cloudy, just used up. In the center of the sky was a circle of light. Not the sun, a ring. Like an eclipse, but inverted. I felt like I had seen it before. And there were people, thousands, silent, all facing the same direction, all waiting. I wasn't afraid, but I couldn't move. I froze. It was the same dream, exactly the same, because I had it too. The night before, down to the ring in the sky, down to the cracked earth, down to the silence. At first, I thought maybe it was someone who had found my notes. Maybe I had written about it somewhere and forgot, but I hadn't. This dream, I hadn't told anyone, not even Nina. I kept it buried because something about it felt different, not just personal, forbidden, like I wasn't supposed to remember it. But now, here it was, in my inbox, from a stranger. And then, 2 hours later, it happened again. A second message, then a third. By midnight, there were over 40. Different senders, different languages, but the same dream. Word for word. I reopened the Discord I had abandoned. It was flooded. A dozen new threads, all titled some version of The Dry Lake, The Circle in the Sky, Have You Had the Ring Dream? It was spreading. Fast. By the end of that week, over 3,000 people had submitted matching reports, blog posts, TikToks, audio logs, a couple of short films. They all told the same story. Cracked earth, silent air, a sky with no sun, just a glowing circle, a crowd frozen in place. And above it all, a presence, not seen, just felt, and in every version, the same ending. I couldn't move, but I didn't want to. That's what scared me the most. Not the visuals, not the numbers, but that final line, because I had written it down myself. I didn't want to move. As if something inside me had agreed, voluntarily, with whatever was happening. Like I'd already said yes to something I didn't understand. The psychologists called it a viral archetype. They said it was a case of mimetic resonance, a psychological echo created by shared language, social media, and pandemic fatigue. But none of them could explain how the dream had appeared simultaneously in people who didn't use the internet, didn't share language, didn't even live on the grid. An 81-year-old farmer in northern Mongolia described the ring in the sky. A 9-year-old girl in Louisiana sketched the cracked lake. A mute woman in Ukraine sent in a charcoal drawing of the crowd, each figure facing the same empty horizon. None of them had ever spoken to each other, but they had dreamed together. And then came the anomaly. A man in Sao Paulo, Andre, 42, physics teacher, very rational, sent in a video of himself walking out to a local dry lake. He had gone there after dreaming it 3 nights in a row. I had to see if it was real, he said. Not the dream, just the place, the layout, the feeling. He filmed the cracks in the soil, the distant hills, the shape of the basin. And when he pointed the camera upward, there it was. Not a ring, not exactly, but a perfect circular cloud formation hovering above him. No other clouds, just that. He didn't speak for 10 seconds. Then, softly, he said, I think something is trying to arrive. That line made its way through the entire dreamer community. I think something is trying to arrive. People began repeating it, whispering it, adding it to captions and audio tags. It wasn't a theory, it was a feeling. Like a train you can't hear yet, but you feel the rails beginning to tremble. Something is coming. By the end of the month, The number of Ring Dream reports had passed 20,000. Independent artists started painting it. Dream therapists began logging it. Even a few semi-mainstream journalists caught wind, calling it the silent vision or the pandemic echo. But they missed the point, because what mattered wasn't how many people had the dream. What mattered was what came next. The 7th night after my own dream, I went to bed early. No screens, no melatonin, no intention. And yet, I returned to the lake. This time, the crowd was larger, millions maybe, stretching to the horizon, and I wasn't in the center anymore. I was at the edge, and we were all looking up at the ring. Only now, the ring wasn't empty. It was opening, slowly, like the shutter of a massive eye. And just before I woke up, I heard something. A voice. Just one word. Remember. I bolted upright. It was 3:13 a.m. I couldn't breathe. I didn't move for a long time. That word echoed inside me like I had known it all my life. Remember. Remember what? A past life? A promise? A warning? Or was it something simpler? Something more urgent? Like a signal to wake up. Not from sleep, but from everything else. From denial. From forgetting. I haven't had the dream again since. Not the ring, not the lake, but others have. Every night, someone else steps into the same vision. The eye opens wider, the silence deepens, and more of us begin to feel it, whatever it is. I don't know what's coming. I don't know if it's a revelation or an ending or both, but I know this: we are not dreaming alone. People have stopped asking if it's real. They don't send me questions anymore, only reflections, pieces, glimpses, a paragraph here, a voice note there, sometimes just a sentence with no context at all. I saw it again. The ring was lower this time. We're all standing in the same place. It knows I'm watching. I wasn't afraid, I just didn't want to forget. These days, I don't respond to every message. I read them quietly. In the early hours, when the world is half asleep and the street outside my window is silent, I sit with them. I listen. Because at some point, I realized we're not waiting for the message. The dreams are the message. That's what took me the longest to understand. I kept looking for a pattern, a climax, a clean shape to hold in my hands and name. I thought if I just mapped the grid wide enough, cross-referenced enough timestamps, tagged enough visuals, the answer would present itself. But dreams don't operate on that frequency. They don't point to truth. They carry it. Like waves carrying moonlight, never touching it, but reflecting it all the same. It's not about prophecy, it's about participation. What we're experiencing, what's happening to us, isn't an announcement, it's an invitation. Something is calling out, not in words, but in patterns, not with commands, but with symbols. And we're not supposed to understand it with our minds. We're supposed to remember it with our being. Let me explain what I mean. In one of my last dreams, I stood in a white room. No windows, no doors, just walls that seemed to stretch into infinity. In the center of the room was a chair, and on the chair sat me, or rather, a version of me. Same body, same face, but aged, hollow-eyed, a version that had seen too much. He looked at me and said, "The truth doesn't come later. It's already here. We're the ones who are late." Then he placed a hand on the floor, and when he did, the entire room vanished, and I saw the lake again, but this time from above. Like I was no longer in the dream, but watching it. And I saw what I had never seen before. The people weren't just standing. They were forming something, a shape, not random, not chaotic. It was a design, like a signal being broadcast back into the sky. Not to be seen with eyes, but felt, understood, remembered. I woke up crying, not out of fear, out of recognition. Like I had finally remembered something I had been trying to forget for a very long time. What that thing is, I still don't have the words. I don't know if anyone does, but I think maybe that's the point. Because this isn't about answers, it's about belonging. To each other, to time, to some deeper order we can't name, but we can feel humming just beneath the surface of our dreams. In the months since the ring dream spread, something else has shifted, not just in me, in the world, a kind of quietness underneath the chaos, a low-frequency awareness, like we're all starting to hear the same subtle drumbeat in the distance, even if we pretend not to notice it, even if we laugh it off, even if we change the subject, it's still there. And once you hear it, you can't unhear it. I think that's why the dreams keep coming, not to warn us, not to predict, but to keep us connected, to remind us that even when we're locked inside our rooms, surrounded by silence, terrified of touch and closeness and uncertainty, we're not dreaming alone. We never were. So what happens next? I don't know. I'm not here to give you an ending. I'm just one node in this strange web of memory and light. But I'll say this, if you've had the dream, if you've seen the ring, or the lake, or the bridge, or the sky with no sun, know this, it wasn't just a dream, it was a message. And maybe you're part of the message too. There's a line someone sent me a few weeks ago. I don't know who wrote it. The message came without a name, no return address, no timestamp, just 6 words. The future dreams us into being. I haven't stopped thinking about it, because maybe that's all this ever was. Not a warning, not a prophecy, not a secret to decode, but a birth. And the dreams are the contractions. And we, each of us, are being called to wake up not from the dream, but through it. So, wherever you are, whatever you believe, if you wake up one night at 3:13 a.m., heart pounding, with the shape of something still flickering behind your eyes, write it down, share it, speak it, not to explain, but to remember, because you're not alone in this. You never were, and the dream, it's still unfolding.